The tale of Polynesian voyagers starts with subtle creativity on remote beaches where early sailors constructed watercraft that would alter human history significantly. These were no typical boats, but elegant double-hulled canoes designed to navigate vast oceans without relying on compasses or maps. Instead, they used the stars, ocean swells, and knowledge passed down through generations. Long before European vessels left the safety of the shore, Polynesian navigators had already developed a vast network across the Pacific Ocean. Spanning 2 million square miles of open sea, they linked islands through commerce, family ties, and discovery. From Samoa to Hawaii, and from the Marquesas to Aotearoa, they transported languages, plants, and traditions over distances once believed unreachable. This is the account of how the most intimidating ocean on Earth became a home, and how its scattered islands were unified by a brilliance born from courage and deep-rooted heritage thousands of years before Europeans dared to sail beyond the horizon. A transformation was underway along the rugged shores of Taiwan in fishing communities where bamboo huts stood above clear blue waters. Skilled builders worked on innovative new crafts that would redefine human exploration for all time. These are not the simple dugout canoes of their ancestors or the basic rafts used by coastal people since ancient times. These boats combine the steady balance of dual hulls with the speed provided by wind power, creating vessels unlike any before. For countless generations, the Aranesian people of Taiwan lived in harmony with the sea, guided by the rhythms of the tides and the abundance of fish that sustained them. Their existence was deeply intertwined with the ocean, which shaped their culture and daily life. However, as their numbers increased and coastal resources dwindled, some began to gaze beyond the familiar shoreline with more than just curiosity. The vast Pacific Ocean became not an obstacle, but a passage, not a foe, but a partner in the grandest journey humanity had ever imagined. In workshops filled with the scent of fresh-cut bamboo and coconut fibers, skilled craftsmen embarked on daring experiments with boat designs. The breakthrough emerged when they discovered a way to connect two parallel hulls using flexible crossbeams. This innovation created a platform that glided over waves like seabirds instead of crashing through them like logs. The space between the hulls formed a broad deck capable of transporting families, livestock, and precious seeds to convert distant atolls into new settlements. Equally groundbreaking were their methods of propulsion. While Mediterranean sailors struggled with square sails that could only move their vessels with the wind behind them, these seafarers engineered triangular sails crafted from pandanus leaves. These sails captured winds from nearly every direction. The design was remarkably clever in its straightforward physics, with the signature claw-shaped cloth enabling efficient navigation across the open ocean. The vessels were designed to capture winds that would disable other ships, while the dual hull structure offered a stability unmatched by any single-hull boat in turbulent waters. Exploring these breakthroughs required bravery close to madness. The earliest sailors to venture beyond protected coastal areas risked everything, relying on bamboo, bindings, and woven fabric to carry them across vast distances their forebears had never dared to cross. Many never made it back, their destinies known only to the ocean and its infinite depths. Yet the survivors returned with stories of lands first sighted beyond the horizon, winds that could guide a skilled navigator to shores untouched by human feet. By 20,000 years before the Common Era, these maritime pioneers had refined their vessels enough to embark on something unprecedented: the organized exploration and colonization of the planet's largest ocean. Their motivation was not just curiosity, but a critical blend of necessity and opportunity. The rugged landscape of Taiwan could support only a limited number of inhabitants. As populations pushed against these limits, the sea became the only route for those courageous enough to pursue it. More than mere people and trade goods, these initial voyages carried the seeds of an entirely new future. Each expedition brought breeding pairs of pigs and chickens, baskets filled with taro sprouts and breadfruit seedlings, fishing nets, and other essential for establishing new settlements. Stone tools and all essentials for founding civilization on barren coral reefs were in their possession. These sea voyagers instinctively grasped that conquering new lands meant more than merely arriving there. It involved turning these places into enduring communities. Their initial target lay temptingly near. The Philippine Islands appeared spread across the skyline like vibrant gems set on a canvas of azure. Bay by bay, island by island, these navigators created settlements all along this extensive archipelago. Each outpost became a base for continued voyages, a treasure trove of knowledge about winds and ocean currents, and a training center where succeeding generations mastered the techniques developed by their forebears. From the Philippines, their journey pressed onward eastward into Melanesia, where towering volcanic mountains emerged from the deep ocean like giant spears pointing skyward. The explorers faced fresh challenges that tested the limits of their abilities. The Solomon Islands stretched over vast expanses of open sea, requiring flawless seamanship that tolerated no mistakes. Vanuatu's active volcanoes influenced local weather, producing winds and currents capable of trapping sailors in endless, perplexing loops. However, with every triumphant crossing and discovery of new shores, the experiences and skills of these maritime experts grew increasingly refined. They became adept at interpreting delicate signals indicating distant lands, such as the unique ways clouds assembled above solid ground, more than above open sea. How specific birds unfailingly navigated toward their resting places at sunset. The way ocean swells transformed when they met submerged reefs or faraway coastlines. Around 1500 years before Christ, the heirs of Taiwan's boat creators achieved their greatest accomplishment yet, the rise of the Lepida cultural complex, which would extend their reach across one-third of the Pacific Ocean. Named after a site in New Caledonia where their unique pottery was initially uncovered, the Lepida people embodied the pinnacle of Polynesian maritime skill. Their communities spread like a chain of stepping stones throughout the southwestern Pacific, each one a testament to clever adaptation and innovation. From their craft centers emerged pottery of remarkable elegance and technical mastery. These vessels featured detailed geometric designs that shaped Pacific artistic traditions for thousands of years. Yet it was their command of the ocean that truly distinguished them from every other civilization on the planet. Lepida navigators conquered challenges that would remain unresolved elsewhere for millennia. They were able to fix their location on endless water by interpreting wave movements invisible to ordinary observers. They committed to memory the seasonal shifts of stars with precision comparable to modern technology. They comprehended the Pacific's intricate wind patterns thoroughly enough to plan voyages lasting several weeks, confidently anticipating the seasonal changes that would produce the conditions they required. Their canoes transformed as their goals expanded. The biggest boats measured more than 100 feet from front to back and featured decks wide enough to accommodate entire extended families during voyages that lasted several weeks. Paired masts carried sails woven from the finest threads, while rudders made from rare hardwoods enabled navigators to hold steady through conditions that would wreck lesser vessels. Yet the latest accomplishment extended far beyond simple engineering. They built the first genuine ocean-bound society, a collection of settlements linked not by land, but through sea paths stretching across thousands of miles. Commerce flowed along these maritime routes, including volcanic obsidian, intricately designed shell jewelry by skilled craftsmen, and rare foods found only on specific islands. Even more crucially, knowledge traveled these same paths as navigators exchanged insights about unknown lands, seasonal cycles, and survival strategies in oceanic settings. Moving eastward, their determination never waned. Around 1300 years before Christ, Fiji was reached by their outrigger canoes. The island's mountainous landscape offered fertile volcanic soil ideal for their farming techniques. From Fiji, the next targets presented themselves: Tonga and Samoa, entry points to the area later recognized as Polynesia proper. These expeditions tested the boundaries of what Stone Age tools could achieve. The voyage from Fiji to Tonga extended nearly 500 miles across open ocean waters with no islands in between to offer shelter if the weather turned harsh for the sailors. Achieving success required more than just skill. It demanded a deep, unwavering bravery that could elevate ordinary individuals into legendary figures. The navigators who undertook these voyages held incredibly detailed star charts in their minds. They memorized the exact points where numerous stars rose and set, understood how each star's position shifted with the seasons, and applied this knowledge to stay on course over immense distances. They read the Pacific Ocean as if it were a grand book, discerning subtle changes in wave patterns that signaled the presence of distant lands still hidden beyond the horizon. Weather patterns became partners rather than threats, as they mastered the art of timing their voyages to make the most of the trade winds at their peak. They recognized that changes in atmospheric pressure with the seasons created brief windows of opportunity lasting only days or weeks. The southwest monsoon winds, which brought fierce storms to some parts of the Pacific, offered ideal conditions for those who positioned themselves wisely. By 1,000 years before the Common Era, Tonga and Samoa had blossomed into vibrant hubs of Polynesian culture. Their ports were bustling with voyaging canoes, and their communities were structured around the challenges and advantages of life at sea. Leaders who could trace their ancestry back to legendary forebears held central roles within these maritime societies, reinforcing the deep connection between navigation and cultural identity. The original navigators possessed authority not only over land, but also the ocean. They commanded routes, linking their domains to the broader Pacific region. Within these seafaring kingdoms, the skills of sailing achieved unprecedented levels of refinement. Expert helmsmen became legendary figures, their expertise handed down through closely protected family lines from one generation to the next. They created training techniques, pushing the limits of human memory, crafting mental charts that covered thousands of square miles of ocean and numerous isolated atolls. Their instruments were beautifully simple yet effective. Charts made of bamboo and shells held encoded data about wave formations and territorial locations in three-dimensional patterns that skilled interpreters could read as easily as a book. Celestial compasses divided the sky into exact directional segments, defined by the rising or setting of specific stars or planets. Even more impressively, these navigators learned to rely on their own bodies as highly accurate tools. They could detect faraway lands by feeling subtle shifts in wave movements through their canoe hulls and anticipate changes in wind direction long before untrained sailors noticed. They developed an almost otherworldly skill to stay on course under overcast skies when stars were hidden. No explicit instructions were given, instead relying on subtle signals from the environment that contemporary science is only just beginning to grasp. Oral traditions that safeguarded this knowledge evolved into remarkable works of Pacific literature. Directional chants, sometimes requiring hours to perform, conveyed intricate details about the positions of stars, prevailing wind flows, seasonal shifts, and attributes of hundreds of distinct atolls. These lengthy verses functioned both as technical guides, historical archives, and sacred scriptures, uniting the practical and spiritual elements of oceanic existence in ways unimaginable for cultures based on land. During this era of transformation, myths emerged capturing the profound nature of their changes. Narratives about divine ancestors who first navigated the vast seas formed the foundational stories for whole communities. Figures like Maui, who drew territories from the depths using enchanted hooks, symbolized the navigator's ability to uncover new lands in what seemed like barren waters. Legends of celestial canoes ferrying gods across the night sky provided navigational advice as well as spiritual motivation for voyagers following star paths toward the east. Religious convictions evolved to reflect oceanic truths. Sea spirits gained importance equal to those of the land, while deities governing wind and waves joined long-standing agricultural gods within enlarged pantheons. Holistic ceremonies sanctified fresh voyages and celebrated the safe return of explorers. Temples constructed on shores further embodied these blended beliefs. Elevated promontories overlooking the water functioned not only as sacred sites, but also as crucial landmarks for ships returning home. The transformation was now complete. What had started as a desperate quest for new fishing areas had grown into something entirely new in human history. A culture that accepted the Pacific Ocean as its dwelling place rather than a barrier. A people who discovered in the vast ocean not emptiness but plenty, not separation but connection. The descendants of Taiwan's boat builders have become a phenomenon the world had never witnessed before. A society whose territory was the sea itself, whose routes were the ocean currents and trade winds, whose navigation was guided by star patterns. From their bases in western Polynesia, these skilled navigators gazed eastward toward the deepest regions of the Pacific with courage and excitement instead of fear. Before them lay their greatest test, settling the Polynesian Triangle, a maritime zone larger than all the continents combined. The winds were favorable, the stars beckoned, and the new generation of captains was prepared to attempt the unimaginable once more. Behind them, a chain of thriving communities thrived, linked by sea lanes alive with the constant passage of canoes. Ahead, an untamed ocean expanse awaited, one that would push them to their limits and require innovations yet unseen. They had spent 1,000 years preparing for this moment. The vast ocean horizon was calling. A voice echoed, impossible for them to ignore. The morning fog clung to the lagoon like ancient spirits unwilling to leave, as the majestic double-hulled canoe Hakua readied itself for a voyage that would push the boundaries of human bravery. From the shores of Samoa, where countless generations of expert wave navigators had honed their skills, the sound of conch shells called out. This marked the launch of a mission that would either expand humanity's reach to the farthest corners of the earth or vanish forever into the endless blue expanse. Hakua itself was the ultimate achievement of seafaring craftsmanship. 60 feet of hand-picked hardwood stretched between two hulls, each carved from a single massive tree and shaped by fire and adzes into sleek forms designed to slice through rough seas like flying fish. The platform linking the twin hulls provided shelter for 22 people, men, women, and children, who carried within them the genetic legacy of future generations yet to be born. Standing firmly at the steering oar, Kanaloa Kalawa represented 3 decades of wisdom and experience. His seasoned hands gripped the smooth, polished wood firmly while his eyes scanned the horizon, seeking secrets that ordinary humans could not perceive. Within his mind, he held a 3-dimensional mental map of the vast Pacific Ocean, covering millions of square miles of seemingly empty water. Every detail was committed to memory with a precision unmatched by European navigation tools for 1,000 more years. With the dawn came the turning point of this epic journey. The tide shifted as the trade winds settled from the southeast, and the swells moved steadily toward the faraway marshes. There was no grand celebration to mark their departure. Such journeys were successful due to expertise and careful planning rather than ritual. Those who stayed on shore watched quietly as the magnificent vessel caught the breeze and started its voyage toward the edge of the known world. Behind them, Samoa gradually disappeared into the morning mist, its mountain peaks fading like faint memories into the endless blue sky. Ahead stretched 2,000 miles of open ocean, interrupted only by scattered atolls that barely rose above the waves. The challenge was immense and deeply complex. Locating targets smaller than Manhattan in an expanse larger than the continental United States using only celestial navigation, wave patterns, and subtle environmental hints revealing islands hidden just beyond the horizon. Still, Kanaloa Kalia felt no anxiety, only the profound contentment of a skilled craftsman embarking on his finest endeavor. The mental compass he held divided the horizon into 32 exact segments, each marked by the rise or setting of particular stars or planets. Hoka's route would follow the movements of specific constellations, changing directions as the seasons passed and different celestial guides took their place in the night sky. The initial weeks pushed every skill the crew had to its limit. The northeast trade winds, expected to carry them steadily towards their goal, proved unpredictable and capricious, constantly shifting their course and testing their resolve with relentless uncertainty. Without any prior warning, the direction sometimes shifted and at times faded away completely. During these moments of stillness, the navigator sensed the deeper rhythms by feeling through the boat's hull the long swells that had traveled thousands of miles for faraway storms. Each wave pattern revealed a story about weather systems beyond the horizon and underwater mountains that shaped the Pacific Ocean's pulse into recognizable signals. Approximately 23 days away from Samoa, the signs began to increase in number. Clouds that had once been scattered and random started forming shapes that indicated the presence of elevated land. The water itself transformed, changing from the deep navy blue of the deep ocean to a lighter turquoise shade that suggested the presence of shallow reefs nearby. The most significant indicator was the arrival of birds. First came the wandering albatross, whose appearance was not very meaningful. Then the tropic birds showed up. Their range stretched for hundreds of miles from their nesting sites. Finally, noddies and terns appeared. Their daily flights revealed the direction of the nearby coastlines. These volcanic peaks emerged from the sea like spears belonging to sleeping giants, their tops catching the early sunlight while waterfalls tumbled down lush, jungle-covered slopes. The crew's excitement erupted into cheers that echoed across the water. They had accomplished what their ancestors could only imagine, pushing their journey further by another giant step towards the rising sun. Reaching land was not the end of old difficulties, but the start of new ones. These isolated territories brought a fresh set of challenges awaiting discovery. There were no vast lagoons or safe harbors, only narrow valleys where streams met the ocean through openings in towering cliffs. The settlers who stepped ashore that first day encountered the overwhelming challenge of creating a society on land that seemed actively unfriendly to human life. Yet, within just one generation, those valleys flourished with well-known crops. Taro gardens ascended the hillsides in steppe terraces, while breadfruit trees supplied both nourishment and material for making bark cloth. The settlers' pigs reproduced in the forests, their offspring eventually growing to great size due to the lack of natural enemies. Most crucially, the voyagers began building new boats, preparing for further exploration and expansion. These early achievements opened a pathway across the vast triangle of ocean that would come to shape the civilization at its broadest reach. From those isolated volcanic summits, expert wave navigators could set course for 3 critical destinations, forming the corners of the greatest cultural region in human history. To the north was the Hawaiian archipelago, a chain of volcanic islands extending over 2,000 miles in the North Pacific. To the southeast, almost unbelievably distant, lay Rapa Nui, the most isolated inhabited place on the planet. To the southwest, the large landmass of Aotearoa awaited, its two regions offering resources and possibilities unlike any in the tropical Pacific environment. Journeying to what later became known as the Sandwich Islands required groundbreaking advancements that pushed seafaring skills beyond previous limits. The span from the Marquesas to the large island extended nearly 2,500 meters across waters no human had ever navigated before. Even more daunting was the need to sail against the prevailing trade winds, finding a path through wind patterns that shifted with the changing seasons and weather systems capable of destroying those who were unprepared. Hawaii Loa, the wayfinder chosen for this ultimate challenge, had spent his youth committing the northern routes to memory, learning to interpret subtle changes in wave formations that signaled the presence of distant lands. His preparation involved lengthy periods of meditation and fasting, spiritual practices that sharpened his awareness of natural signs invisible to most people. The magnificent vessel that carried Hawaii Loa and his crew toward their fate marked a significant advance in maritime design. Almost 100 feet long and wide enough to support a small community, the canoe featured innovations derived from many years of ocean voyages. Its hulls were deeper and more seaworthy than earlier models, while the deck offered space for extended families and all provisions necessary for permanent settlement. The northward journey unfolded like an epic saga written in starlight and ocean spray. For weeks, the tremendous ship contended with opposing winds and towering waves. As the waves rose, the crew took turns managing the steering sweeps, while Hawaii kept watch from the platform. Their guiding compass changed direction nightly as they progressed into northern regions where unfamiliar star patterns moved across the sky. After 43 days since departing the Marquesas, the first sight of land appeared. The towering peaks of the largest island emerged on the horizon like a vision from a divine realm. Their snow-covered summits floated above clouds that seemed to meet the heavens themselves. The volcanic activity that had formed these mountains still burned within them, sending plumes of smoke and ash into the air visible for hundreds of miles. Settling in these northern lands was as demanding as getting there. The volcanic terrain of the large island offered very few natural bays, while the ongoing eruptions of Kilauea and Mauna Loa created a landscape unlike anything the settlers had experienced. Yet these difficulties brought remarkable possibilities. The volcanic earth was extremely rich, allowing crops to reach sizes never seen in the coral atolls of the south. The vastness of the territory provided ample space for communities that could never thrive on smaller islands. From this large island, expansion moved forward along the island chain. Each newly found place presented its own set of challenges and opportunities. Oahu's Pearl Harbor stood out as one of the best natural harbors in the entire Pacific. Kauai, known as the Garden Isle, boasts some of the most nutrient-rich soil within the area. On Maui, the Hekala crater forms unique microclimates that nurture a variety of ecosystems. The settlers who spread across the islands developed advanced farming techniques capable of sustaining communities numbering in the hundreds of thousands. While certain navigators pursued routes heading north, others set their sights on a far more daring goal. Far away to the southeast, beyond where any land birds could reach, there lay the most remote inhabited place on the planet. Reaching this isolated station demanded crossing 2,300 meters of open ocean, relying solely on the stars for guidance through waters no human craft had yet traversed. The leader of this ultimate journey was Haumata, a name meaning great parent in the language of his people. He had seen visions of a distant land where enormous stone heads stood watch over rich valleys. These dreams inspired him to attempt what seemed impossible. His preparations were painstaking and thorough, equipping his vessels with everything necessary to found a new civilization on shores that might offer nothing but rugged rock and salty spray. Venturing toward that distant outpost tested the limits of the navigator's skills. The fleet sailed southeast from the Marseilles, moving into increasingly empty seas as the main islands disappeared behind them. No birds accompanied their voyage, nor did clouds hint at any nearby land. Only the stars above offered direction, their nightly movement across the firmament forming the sole link between the explorers and their destination. The internal struggles were just as demanding as the hardships battled against the natural world. Day after day, the sailors encountered a horizon that revealed nothing but an endless expanse of blue. The urge to abandon the journey increased with each dawn, while doubts about the goal unsettled even the most devoted members. It was Omachua's unwavering certainty that propelled the mission onward through the vast void of the Southeast Pacific. When that distant land finally emerged, its low silhouette barely rising above the waves, it felt almost underwhelming after weeks filled with eager expectation. Yet, as the vessel approached, the true essence of this place became apparent. This was a land of rare splendor and enigma. Gentle hills stretched out, cloaked in grass that moved like vast green oceans under the relentless wind. Along the shores stood peculiar statues, their stone visages staring out over the sea with expressions that seemed to carry timeless mysteries. The settlers who chose to live on this isolated territory encountered distinct hardships, pushing their adaptability to the extreme. Isolation demanded that every resource be used with utmost care. Each choice was made with its lasting impact firmly in mind. The lack of towering trees called for inventive solutions in both building and crafting tools. The scarcity of fresh water required advanced systems for gathering and storing it. From these challenges arose one of the most extraordinary civilizations in human history. The stone statues scattered across the terrain, known as moai, symbolized feats in both engineering and craftsmanship that matched or exceeded those of their contemporaries. The quarries where these monumental sculptures were shaped turned into hubs of creativity, with methods perfected through the expertise of generations of skilled artisans. Turning towards the southwest, they approached the final corner of the vast triangle. Aroa, a vast landmass still awaiting discovery, lay ahead. This journey would differ from all others because its destination was not a small island, but rather an entire continent offering resources and possibilities far beyond those found in the tropical Pacific. At the helm of this voyage was Coop, a navigator whose name would become synonymous with exploration and discovery throughout the region. His preparation involved careful study of bird migration patterns, especially the yearly journeys of the godwit and other species that disappeared southward each winter. These flight routes provided essential hints needed to chart a course through completely unfamiliar seas. The route to Arrow across some of the most formidable waters in the Pacific. The Roaring Forties, a belt of strong westerly winds circling the Earth at 40 degrees south latitude, produced conditions much harsher than any encountered in the tropical Pacific. Enormous waves traveled across thousands of miles of open ocean, while storms driven by the Antarctic ice sheets brought fierce winds capable of destroying the unprepared. Nevertheless, these challenging conditions also created chances for experienced navigators. Once captured, the westerly winds could push a ship eastward at speeds far beyond what the gentler trade winds of the tropics could achieve. The bird species of the Southern Ocean, though unlike anything they had seen before, followed patterns that indicated the presence of far-off land to those wise enough to interpret the signs. Reaching Aodia represented the fulfillment of one of history's most remarkable feats. The two land masses that future generations would name New Zealand extended across 1,000 miles of coastline, their mild climate and varied ecosystems providing resources to support entirely new lifestyles. The settlers who made these shores their home faced the challenge of adjusting tropical farming methods to a landscape shaped by glacial valleys and snow-covered mountains. From the beaches where Coop first set foot, newcomers spread throughout both islands. The volcanic zone of the North Island offered familiar landscapes to people used to such geography, while the southern Alps of the South Island served as rich hunting areas where enormous birds supplied protein on a scale never seen before in the Pacific. The lack of native land mammals, except for bats and marine animals, created environmental opportunities that humans exploited. Settlers gradually occupied the land, initiating a profound transformation without hesitation. The giant flightless birds known as moas, which had evolved in isolation for countless millennia, quickly became targets of intense human hunting. Extensive forests filled with native trees supplied essential materials for building structures and crafting tools, while the abundant marine life in nearby waters sustained the flourishing coastal communities. By the year 1300, the expansive triangle was fully established. From the northern chain through the eastern settlement to the southern mainland, a network of interconnected peoples spread over a territory surpassing any empire in recorded history. What was once perceived as an impassable water barrier transformed into a vital route linking dispersed groups through a mesh of genetic and cultural interchange. The vessels that ensured these ties embodied the highest achievement of Stone Age seafaring technology. The largest boats could carry crews numbering 50 or more, their double hulls offering stability across turbulent waters, while their advanced propulsion methods enabled progress even against adverse winds. The navigational techniques that directed these journeys evolved into a refined art form, demonstrating remarkable complexity and elegance. This accomplishment transcended simple technology. The vast triangle symbolized an unparalleled chapter in human history, a society that embraced the ocean as its realm, viewing the immense Pacific not as emptiness, but as plenty, not as isolation, but as connection. The shared languages, similar artistic styles, and common customs that linked communities separated by thousands of miles of ocean demonstrated the success of this cultural adaptation. The routes connecting the points of the triangle carried far more than just merchandise and travelers. They conveyed ideas, inventions, and traditions that enriched each society they encountered. The chance-preserving navigational knowledge also transmitted historical memories, family histories, and spiritual beliefs across the vast distances between scattered settlements. As the sun dipped below the Pacific horizon, casting hues of gold and red upon the waves, the magnificent vessels continued their timeless journeys among the dispersed lands. Their sailors upheld the hopes and accomplishments of ancestors who dared to explore beyond the visible line, sustaining bonds that transformed the world's largest ocean into humanity's extraordinary homeland. Under the star-filled canopy of a Pacific night, 12-year-old Manu lay on his back atop the broad platform of his grandfather's sailing canoe, absorbing the celestial map that had guided his people across nearly 2 million square miles of seemingly endless water. The elder's aged finger traced unseen paths between shining stars, constructing a network of knowledge so intricate that European scholars would spend hundreds of years attempting to grasp its genius. In a hushed tone, the elder recounted how Altar emerged beyond the world's edge, a radiant beacon that indicated their position on the voyage to distant territories. Each evening brought subtle shifts as the celestial sphere rotated above. With each season, the points where familiar guides appeared changed. The sky was not stationary, but moved and evolved like a living organism. The training of a master navigator began in early years and extended over many decades, shaping ordinary people into living instruments of great accuracy, capable of navigating with precision unmatched by machines for another millennium. These human compasses held in their minds complex, three-dimensional charts of the Pacific, encompassing not only the locations of many lands, but also the cyclical movements of stars, the changing patterns of winds and currents, and delicate environmental signs that pointed to faraway coasts. At the heart of this method was the idea of the directional wheel, a mental map that split the world's horizon into 32 exact sectors, each defined by the rising or setting of specific bright points. Rather than relying on basic cardinal directions used by those on land, this system acknowledged that the sky itself was always moving, meaning navigators had a grasp not only where stars appeared, but also when and how their positions shifted throughout the year. The lessons began with Hakua, the brightest star in the constellation of Birds, whose name meant beacon of joy in the ancient language. This guiding light appeared in the northeast at specific times of the year, serving as a key reference point for journeys heading toward the northern lands. However, the experienced helmsman knew that Hakua's position gained significance only in connection with many other landmarks, each forming a complex network of navigational knowledge. The elder shared that the mind must become like a vast vessel capable of containing the movements of every shining star, every constellation, and every planet that traveled the celestial routes. Once this mental container was complete, navigators would never lose their way because the sky itself would provide guidance. The process of memorization tested human mental capacities to their utmost limits. Learners dedicated many years to mastering the names, locations, and seasonal shifts of these bright celestial bodies, committing to memory charts that would have challenged the most skilled scholars in any civilization. The star cluster called Matariki gave essential information on timing for seasonal voyages. The Southern Cross, known as Tapunga, acted as a stabilizing marker for southern routes. Every constellation held numerous layers of significance, including navigational, seasonal, and spiritual meanings that had to be fully understood before a student advanced to higher levels of study. Yet, the night sky was just one dimension of this sophisticated wave-finding system. The Pacific Ocean held an immense collection of intricate signals accessible only to those skilled enough to interpret its subtle messages.